Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to track the brief, absolutely explosive 4-year mainstream career of Jimi Hendrix. When we think of rock and roll legends, few names burn as brightly, or honestly, as fast, as James Marshall Hendrix. He was an absolute force of nature. He burst onto the global scene in 1966, and tragically, passes away just 4 years later in 1970. But in that incredibly tight window, he completely redefined what the electric guitar could do.
But before we get into the history, we really need to ask, how does a boy from Seattle manage to literally and figuratively set the music world on fire? See, young Hendrix was deeply affected by poverty and family struggles. He would often hide in a closet just to escape the chaos in his home. He was this highly sensitive, super shy kid. So how on earth did that quiet child transform into the absolute wildest, most uninhibited performer in the history of rock music?
Well, the answer really lies in how much he gave to his art. Hendrix once said, "I decided to destroy my guitar at the end of a song as a sacrifice. You sacrifice things you love. I love my guitar." That mindset is exactly what led to the iconic 1967 Monterey Pop Festival, where he famously burned his instrument right there on stage, instantly shifting from a rumor to an absolute legend. To him, it wasn't just some cheap gimmick. It was this deeply theatrical release of raw emotion. But to truly wrap our heads around the weight of that sacrifice, we have to look at what the guitar meant to him right from the start.
Section 1. The Broom and the Ukulele. Let's look at his early years. To understand the roaring fire he became, we have to rewind to the kindling, a childhood of poverty in 1950 Seattle. The guitar wasn't just an instrument for Jimmy, it was a lifeline. At his elementary school, he literally carried a broom around like a security blanket just to emulate a guitar. It was so noticeable, a school social worker actually wrote letters begging for funding to buy him a real instrument, worried he'd suffer psychological damage without one. The funding fell through. Eventually, he graduated from that broom to a ukulele he found out in the garbage while helping his dad clean a house. And get this, it only had a single string. Just one. But with that one string, he taught himself to play along by ear to Elvis Presley's Hound Dog.
It's kind of crazy to think about, considering the rock royalty he'd eventually become, but his dad finally bought him his first actual acoustic guitar at age 15 for just $5. $5! He played it for hours every single day, just soaking up the electric blues of Muddy Waters and B.B. King. That tiny $5 investment was the spark that ignited his entire musical vocabulary.
Section 2. From Paratrooper to Sideman, Finding His Path.
So his obsession with the instrument followed him literally everywhere. After getting caught riding in stolen cars as a teenager, Hendrix was given a choice: prison or the army. He chose the 101st Airborne Division, but he was so focused on playing that he neglected his duties and eventually got discharged. Back in civilian life, he spent some really frustrating years stuck in the background on the Chitlin circuit. He's playing behind massive stars like the Isley Brothers and Little Richard. But those gigs, they came with incredibly strict rules about wardrobe, timing, and staying strictly out of the spotlight. Actually, Little Richard fired him for his flashy stage antics. Hendrix finally found true artistic freedom when he moved to the vibrant clubs of Greenwich Village in New York. There, he shed the sideman restrictions and started mixing rock, R&B, and blues into something he called free feeling.
Section 3. The London Spark. His global breakthrough. The real spark finally caught in 1966. While playing a New York club, Linda Keith, who was dating Keith Richards at the time, was completely mesmerized. She introduces him to Chas Chandler, who immediately brings him to London to form a brand new band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Within days of landing in London, Chandler sneaks Jimmy into a venue where the legendary band Cream is playing. Hendrix just casually asks if he can jump on stage for a couple of numbers. He plugs in, launches into this frantic version of Howlin' Wolf's Killing Floor, and leaves Eric Clapton completely spellbound. Clapton later confessed that Hendrix didn't even do it in an arrogant, upstaging way. He was just that unbelievably talented. He walked off, and Clapton said his life was never the same again. Hendrix had officially arrived.
Section 4. Taking over the UK. A rapid ascent.
This wildfire quickly spread across the UK, totally fueled by his frantic performances. Fun fact, some of his famous stage antics started by pure accident. During a gig in Munich, a frenetic audience rushes the stage. Hendrix panics, tries to escape, and accidentally smashes his guitar. The audience assumes it's part of the act and goes absolutely nuts, so Chas Chandler decides, yep, that's a permanent feature now. Just think about how shockingly fast this happened. He arrives in September 1966. By December, Hey Joe is a massive hit. By May, his debut album hits number 2, only blocked by the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. And then, the ultimate flex. 3 days after Sgt. Pepper drops, Hendrix opens a London show by playing the title track. Paul McCartney was sitting right there in the audience and later called it one of the great honors of his career.
Section 5. The Monterey Sacrifice. The Burning Guitar.
That wild UK success is exactly what led Paul McCartney to insist that Hendrix perform at the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival. This was his big introduction to the American audience, and he knew he had to do something completely unforgettable. He needed to top bands like The Who, who were already smashing their instruments. A journalist had joked earlier that year, "It's a pity you can't set fire to your guitar." Well, Hendrix took that literally. At the end of his set, he douses his guitar in lighter fluid and sets it ablaze. Now picture this. In the front row is a 17-year-old photographer named Ed Karieff. He has exactly one shot left on his roll of film. He stands on a chair, literally uses his camera to shield his face from the intense heat, and captures Hendrix kneeling, hands raised to the flames. It cemented an unforgettable visual that perfectly matched the raw, untamed power of his live sound.
Section 6. Bold Studio Sorcery. His Sonic Innovations.
But here's the thing, Hendrix wasn't just a live spectacle, he was a visionary producer and composer. On the track Axis Boldest Loft, he completely leaned into stereo phasing. That's an effect that makes you, the listener, literally feel the music moving and orbiting around your head. Keep in mind, stereo sound was relatively new in mainstream rock back then. Hendrix was treating the studio mixer like it was a completely separate instrument, pairing his growing obsession with sci-fi and outer space with some seriously groundbreaking audio engineering.
The absolutely crucial point here is how he completely reimagined what a guitar was even supposed to sound like. Before Hendrix, audio feedback, that awful high-pitched squeal when a guitar gets too close to an amp, was considered a huge mistake. Sound engineers loathed it. But Hendrix, he embraced it. He took that amp howl and harnessed it so his guitar could literally scream with emotion, which you can hear on tracks like I Don't Live Today. He took a sonic error and turned it into a controlled, fluid musical vocabulary. He became a true pioneer of tone-altering effects. By adopting pedals like fuzz, distortion, the Octavia, the wah-wah pedal, the Univibe, and using all sorts of backward recording techniques, he completely changed the game. As Rolling Stone pointed out, he was one of the very first to use the electric guitar not just as a stringed instrument, but as a full-blown electronic sound source. Fast forward to 1969, and he's the highest-paid rock musician in the world. His legendary feedback-drenched performance of the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock showcased the absolute peak of his wildfire trajectory. He took all of those studio innovations, the feedback, the intense distortion, the sheer earth-shattering volume, and created a defining cultural moment for the 1960s. But tragically, this brilliant flame was extinguished way too soon. Jimi Hendrix died in London from barbiturate-related asphyxia in September 1970. He was only 27 years old. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought to take away from our explainer today. We've traced this incredible journey from a little kid with a broomstick to a rock god with a burning guitar. From the strict rules of the Chitlin Circuit to the absolute freedom of Woodstock. All of that history, all of that massive innovation, all those timeless albums, they all happened in a span of just 4 years. If a 4-year mainstream career could fundamentally alter the trajectory of modern music forever, how much more innovation did we miss out on? What would the landscape of rock, R&B, and electronic music look like right now if that wildfire had been given decades to burn? It's an absolutely incredible legacy to leave behind in such a short amount of time. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the life of Jimi Hendrix.